Welcome to the first episode of Mondo Neon Podcast. Very excited to have Rich Flores. Rich, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We kind of found each other in an interesting way. You reached out to me on Facebook. Tell me about yourself. Tell me where you grew up.
Yeah, well, I initially, as a youngster, like around 11 or 12, I've always had a love of anything that was electronic. I started fixing TVs at the age of 14. Was always into phonograph records, always were interesting in all kinds of fluorescent lighting equipment, and that was like a thing that I had a little love for. I used to experiment with fluorescent lighting, try different ballast, and I was always wanted to know how the hell did they get to bend the glass, put the electrodes, pump the gas. And there was no information in school, in junior high school, in grammar school, nothing to really, point you in that direction. So many years passed by. By the time I was like in my 20s, I tried to get a job in neon shops, but you needed the training first. So I said, to hell with it. Okay, I'm going to go for my passion, which was phonograph records. In 1972, I decided to buy my first record cutting lathe, and I started a little small DJ record cutting facility called Melting Pot Sound, and that's where it took off from there. The neon for me came actually in 1984, where at the time I saw an ad on Channel 5 in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, by the way.
Interesting enough, can we backtrack? You taking apart stuff, can you tell me? I mean, you were like, how do you do...
Well, I was like a tinkerer. Right. I mean, yeah, I used to take stuff apart, want to know how it works, learn, to troubleshoot electronic equipment.
Yeah, what was the thing you took apart? Like, what's one of the things you like?
Well, radios. I used to start with the radios that I used to find in the street. And people would throw their 5-tube radio sets.
Yeah.
The old Crosleys from 1948, 49. And that's what I got started in repairing. Oh, here's a burnt out resistor, or it's a shorted capacitor. My father bought me at the age of 14 a little VOM meter, volt ohm meter. Yeah. And that's how I got my started, by picking up the books, reading. Nobody told me, hey, here's a book. No, I did it on my own.
Like, New York is such an amazing place. There's like that scavenger mentality. Like, someone else's, trash someone else's gold.
Exactly.
You just learn from that and take it in, and you're exposed to that.
And dumpster diving. That's how I did it. So that's how I acquired my background in electronics, is self-taught, basically.
Right.
By the time I got to high school, they didn't want to pass me with an A+. They say, well, we got to pass you with a B because it's not fair to the other kids.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mean it's not fair to the other kids? So in 1986, I decided to get rid of the record cutting machine because, record cutting, CDs were being introduced in 1981.
Wait, so Travis, you graduate high school. You're going. Where do you end up? How did you get from?
Well, actually, I'm a high school dropout.
Okay, so you were like, this is not right for No,
I was bullied in school.
Right.
Yeah, I had fights. This is Brooklyn. This is 1960. 67, 66.
And how old are you at this time?
Well, I was about 17 at the time, or 16. Yeah, 16 or 17. Yeah, in 1968.
And it was weird. Like, now it's cool to be different, right?
Yeah,
now it's like celebrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then it was just like you stuck out. You were just gonna,
You're gonna be targeted.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was, So you just.
So that's the reason why I dropped out.
Yeah.
Teachers didn't want to give me a break, and I dropped out for that reason. Because I was bullied at school for being the best and the brightest, and the teacher didn't want to pass me within 100. And this was electronics class at George Westinghouse High School back in 1968. Mm-hmm. Then I transferred. Before that, I was going to Eastern District High School, which was on Marcy Avenue at the time, and it was better. But it wasn't a trade school, where you learn auto mechanics or dental mechanics. So I decided I choose the school that my older brother went to as a dental mechanic, a dental technician. and I took up radio and TV repair electronics at West George Westinghouse High School. I said, you know what? Told my mother in Spanish. I said, you know what? I'm going to go out to work, and I did.
Yeah.
And my first job was testing radio tubes at the corner of J Street and Myrtle Avenue in Brooklyn. Yeah, Myrtle. The store is gone.
Gentrified now, but back then.
No,
right?
but they built a high-rise office building in its place.
Right.
You know, Metrotech, right?
Right.
So, you know, the subway, known as the Myrtle Avenue line, used to run, and J Street was the last stop on Myrtle and J Street. I grew up in Bushwick at 24 Humble Street in the projects. Yeah, I was a product of the projects.
Obviously, so you're testing electronics right now.
Yeah.
You've got this trade thing you've got going on. Where happens next?
The future looked bright when in 1986, when I finally decided I'm going to get rid of the record cutting. Let me go back. Let me backtrack to when I moved out of my parents' house in 1971, and that's where. Besides that,
So just conflict at home and
conflict that. You know, so during that time, I met Walter Gibbons. Walter Gibbons is a very famous DJ who is like he's got credits to records like Gloria Gaynor, 10%, Sal Soul Orchestra, Sal Soul Orchestra. So that came later in Walter Gibbons' life. And let's talk a little bit about Walter Gibbons. Walter Gibbons was a talented DJ genius.
So wait, where does music come in? You're in electronics. I mean, was that just a
byproduct
of?
I had a love to, for record cutting. I was interested in the music and the process, how records were manufacturing. I had the interest in neon. So when I met Walter Gibbons, he was just 17 coming out of his house, and he showed me how he used to mix two records on two turntables. I was fascinated. So he showed me an acetate that he had done at Angel Sound. And I said, where did you get these records made? They're aluminum records that coated with lacquer. I said, there's a place on Broadway and 50th Street where he had the records made. And, so we decided to move in together. And, of course, I said, you know what, Walter? I said, the best thing for us to do, let's see if I can find a record cutting machine. And let's put one together and let's start a DJ record cutting service. And we named it Melting Pot Sound.
Did you know what was going on at the time? Like, did you know other people doing records, or were you just?
Yeah, he told me that a lot of DJ. He had a massive record collection.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of out of print records at all. So yeah, he had a massive record collection. And I said, what's your record collection? Yeah. And we could reissue those out of print records. And he did his own mixing. So I got him his first job at the Outside Inn, a gay club on Baxter near Roosevelt Avenue in Queens at the time, back in 1971. And I actually launched his career as a very well-known DJ. Just look him up on the internet, Walter Gibbons,
It's popular now. It's almost like celebrities. Back then, I mean, DJs were still treated with
He did it on vinyl.
Right, I mean...
He used to take two turntables and cut in and was good at it.
Right, and I mean, you had to do everything yourself. Now, I mean, obviously electronics, they say what it is. It's easier now, but you really had to, I mean...
They know DJs
the crates, you had to take all the right?
Exactly, I've done it too. It's heavy, right.
So it was a commitment, like to be a DJ, right? You had to...
So that's, that's where it was, in 1971, 72, 73, 74... relocating to Manhattan, to West 46th Street. So it kind of like the whole thing with the record cutting ended at like 86 when I finally sold the lathe to a guy named to Transco Records in Linden, New Jersey, which was a manufacturer of blank records. And then when I saw, in 1984, when I saw this ad on television for the Glass Experimental Workshop on Mulberry Street, I saw this thing that they were giving classes for $100. And then something lit up in my head. I said, neon. Now I'm going back years when I was a youngster, like at the age of 14, 13.
Yeah.
I said, so I took up the class, and that's where I met Gasper and Gooey.
When you walked by the store, were you it was one of those self-discovery moments? Did you know what you were getting into?
Yeah, I did. Because I saw that neon was just popping out everywhere as a pop culture thing. So 86, some Jamaican guys from the Bronx bought the lathe, man. I sold it for like at that time, I think I sold it for like $6,000. Bob Kosilage got another $2,000 from his commission. The lathe was gone. The neon equipment was already in place at that time.
Yeah.
And bingo, I set up the neon shop right in my own apartment. Ribbon burner, crossfires, vacuum pump. And I did it. I went feet first. Boom. Gasper, it wasn't an intensive hand. It was just like a layman's or very novice type of thing where, here's a couple of sticks of glass and show you how to do it on the crossfire. And
the flame is hot. We're talking,
Yeah, well, crossfire, yeah, it's hot. You ever heat up your coffee in the stove?
You can't see the heat on the glass as well, right? I've been a part of that. It's just like, that's the thing people think.
Invisible.
It grows, exactly.
It is kind of like glowing like a deep yellowish orange when you have it in the fires.
Yeah.
And it's soft and it becomes molten.
Yeah.
But once you put it down and it hardens, it's still hot. Mm-hmm. So you can't see the heat, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every glass bender has a preference in how the flame is adjusted. So you just can't go into a neon shop and say, hey, let me start bending the glass. So everybody has a different timing.
Yeah.
And the timing is in your brain from the time the glass gets soft and when you take it out of the flame. Right.
And everyone's equipment is different too. It could be sourced. It could be a different year. It's like somebody else's car. You get in somebody else's car. The seat's different. It's you got the different vibe. It doesn't feel right.
Well, there's different.
Right?
There's crossfires that are 5-point, 10 tips, and there's a single head crossfire, which is ET 770, I think it is, or ET 77, which was the one which I learned on, which is very hot, but it's a very thin flame, sort of like a blade. And so there's different techniques, and then you have to adjust the distance between the two heads, so that it depends how much how much gas you put into it.
Yeah.
The air adjustment, the mixture.
What was the first piece you made? I love this question. First piece of neon you ever made. It's different for everybody. Do you remember? Was there something that stands out for you? It doesn't have to be the first one, but was it a heart? Was it a letter? It's difficult enough to make something.
The first piece that I sold commercially was for my brother's boss. It was called Photo ID Cards with a white border around it and blue clear lettering. That's the first one I did.
Yeah.
So I set up the neon shop in a studio apartment in Jamaica, Queens, and that's how I started. And once I got the knack of it, I bought glass. Started doing it and printed up my business cards, went out to the streets with a photo album, took some pictures, and I was really surprised how many sales I did. Yeah.
What year is this? This is around...
This is 86.
So neon...
87.
Neon's still popping. It's still... this is a big... The 80s were a big time for neon.
Right. So 86 was really... It was really happening. The record cutting machine was already gone. Walter was gone. Everybody, I was living alone. The neon was really popping and I was making sales. And you want to hear something really strange?
What's that?
That when I used to go door to door selling neon to stores in the street, I used to get deposits. Some guys would give me $100 deposit. As a matter of fact, there was one student at the Glass Experimental Workshop who wanted an art piece. And that was an abstract of a punk rocker with the yellow hair, which I think I showed you a photo of.
I love that.
Yeah. That was, believe it or not, that was like my second neon, and he enclosed that in a plexiglass box.
Yeah.
Really came out good. I took a picture of it, and that's the photo you saw. With Rudy Stern, Let There Be Neon, he published that book, and that's where neon really got its real second boost, like in the 70s, like late 60, 68, 69, 70. And, but basically, majority of my work was all commercial signage, pizza, jewelry, 14 karat gold, lotto. That was basically the majority of my income.
Yeah.
I didn't do any art pieces after that. Did an art piece of a heart for a guy who did a hair cutting. Mondo Loves Haiti. He did that. So, long story short, we're going to jump ahead. Where I got out of working out of my apartment. Now I'm making $700 a week, $600, $500 a week for 1986, 87, 88. So my roommate at the time, Raymond, he said, "You know what?" He says, "We can bring this up to the next level." And he made a phone call to Richard Basciano from Show World.
Yeah.
And Richard Basciano is known as the kingpin of porn, which Show World Center is right on 42nd and 8th Avenue. He owns a lot of property, wealthy man.
Right.
In the mob,
Richard's
most likely. Basciano, yeah, he's in the
Basciano.
mob for sure. Yeah,
Real
porn,
estate, right?
Yeah, real estate, porn kingpin.
Times Square, right?
Yes, the works. So the guy, he made the appointment to see this guy. And he says, "You know what, guys, I like you." He says, "This is what I'm going to do." He says, "I'm going to set you guys up." So he did. He says, "I got a friend named Vincent Palmieri. He's going to set you up. I got a location over here at 244 West 42nd Street. I'm going to let you have the loft rent-free for 2 years." Wow, I can't. He said, "Make me an offer I can't refuse." Hey, make me an offer I can't refuse, you know? So that was it. So we started a company called Diversified Neon Inc. Except that Raymond Cordero was a screwball. But I did most of the work, and I did all the neons for Show World from 1987 to 88. And then during that year's time, I did all the neons for their Show World, and I showed you photos.
Yeah.
I got videos. Only thing that screwed up that deal was that we decided to do a neon illuminated bicycle frame.
You know, when you walked in and you kind of met him and he was
I was impressed by his office.
Were you just
lavish? And he had a few projects that he wanted to promote, indoor neon as well.
Yeah,
I mean, massive decorations of neon.
You're looking at signage. I mean, that's it, right? When you walk by, that's how you.
Yeah, and then he saw that I had an electrical background also. You know, they bring all the machines to us on the 4th floor, and we have oscilloscopes, voltmeters, test equipment, you name it, spare parts, belts, motors, everything to repair.
It's like a mad scientist lab.
Exactly. Panasonic professional VHS tape machines, which were controlled by this massive system where cabling.
So he got two
but
people
he
for
had
the
us
price
to
of
do
one.
all
Basically,
that. We had like 5 technicians working on that. It was great. So not only did I did neons for him and sold him neons under my company name, but also did the VCR repair work for him too. And that's what he liked about me, that I was versatile in the talent there. And then the only thing that it was okay. I gave him neon at a discount, but that was basically, he saw, like you said, the diamond in the rough for doing neon.
He saw the big picture.
Yes, exactly. His advertising base right there. Repair and maintenance also.
Right, because neon is one of those. I mean, it does require.
It gets break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transformers basically fail. Eventually, they burn out, and you replace them, and that's basically where he saw the opportunity to have what they call an in-house neon shop. That was a win-win situation for him. Now, what happened was the backlash that he got from this. You mentioned something about the political aspect of his business. What happened was when Mayor Dinkins was the mayor of the city of New York, he donated to him rent-free an office space for his campaign. And that was the backlash at 300 West 43rd Street. Okay, so Diversified Neon in 1988, 89. My partner, we had a corporation of a partnership of split 3 ways. The corporation was me, Raymond Cordero, and Vincent Palmieri. So what happened was, we were selling neon at $4 a foot, $5.
How many guys are out there? How many sign shops are there at this time?
A lot at that time.
I mean, ballpark.
Oh yeah, you had at least 10 to 15.
So enough to really be a threat.
Right. Oh yeah, you had Say It in Neon, a guy named Tony Palumbo, may he rest in peace, and I used to work for them as a glass bender. You had Iris Signs, which was also a Colombian, brothers. Were 5 Colombian brothers who were all glass benders who were from Colombia originally. Excellent glass benders, the best I've seen in the business. Of course, they're retired already. They're gone. Then you had David Avalon. You had Gasper. you had so many different glass benders that were known. You had Rudy Stern. You had a Russian guy named Edward Signs. You had so many. And then what happened was my partner, Raymond Cordero, decided to say to the news media, to the New York Post, that he was homeless and he was living in the neon shop. When Richard Basciano got a hold of the story from the New York Post, all hell broke loose.
So he's going out there. So a little backstory here. This is sort of like a media blitz.
Yeah, the neon bicycle. 3 neon tubes on the frame of a 10-speed bicycle.
Yeah, for nobody knows a neon bicycle. Were these a thing? Was this what neon bicycle was this sort of like the first of its kind at the time?
Kind of. Yeah.
So it wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't being recycled elsewhere.
No,
right? You were not. There was nobody.
Nobody had done
neon
this.
Bicycles.
No.
Very unique.
Yeah, it was.
And so you've made the neon bicycle at this point, and then he decides to go to the.
We were looking for. We were trying to look for an investor
for the neon bicycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We were looking for an investor, and the way to get that investor was to go public, and while the patent was pending.
Yeah.
We didn't. We had a patent pending. Well, I went to a lawyer. Patent fell through. That's a long story, no short, but. When Richard Basciano got a hold of it, that we went public, it aired on Channel 2 WCBS in New York.
Yeah.
Where Maury Alter was actually riding the bicycle with it illuminated in front of cameras. And Raymond Cordero said that he was homeless and sleeping in the neon shop. Richard Basciano, I says, I give you guys a loft rent-free, and this is the way you guys pay me back.
Yeah.
He didn't want that negative publicity because Maury Alter said on that news interview, above the porn theater, the neon shop, Diversified Neon, and Raymond Cordero with the neon bicycle.
So it's drawing massive amounts of attention.
Right. It kind of like a negative implication that he was homeless.
Yeah. Because
I'm not homeless. He was.
Because it's zoned for commercial, right? There's no residential.
Exactly. And
he's
not supposed to live there.
And I'm sure there's a lot of heat on the industry itself, with Basciano and just his connections with everything.
And the ties to the mob.
And just limit as much as possible. So you guys are in this media frenzy.
Right.
And now you're wrapped up into it.
Right.
Clearly.
Right. So we get an eviction. From a rent-free, we get an eviction from a rent-free loft. I had to walk away from it. And I found somebody to buy the neon equipment, a guy named Felix from Jersey City, and I sold the equipment to him.
How tense was that situation going back to
because I had to move.
Raymond?
I had to move back to my parents' house in Jamaica, and I had no longer a place to stay of my own.
Did you ever consider moving the operation somewhere else and starting over again?
No, because at that time we already saw the writing on the wall. We had a meeting with my partner Vincent Parmeri, and he says, you guys are trying to beat a dead horse. The competition, we just can't compete no more. Mm-hmm. He initially put like $5,000 into the business. That was his initial investment, which he lost, by the way. And my salary, I wasn't making money with Diversified Neon and Richard Basciano.
It's tough.
So they called in the lawyer, the lawyer that did the incorporation, and we how do you say, we had to have the business name Diversified Neon, dissolution of business. What they call a dissolution of corporation is when you have a corporation and you're going to kill it, your lawyers have to come in and dissolve the business, and that's what happened with Diversified Neon Inc. I mean, the neon for me, it ended like around 1995. Where I was still working in I worked in a lot of neon shops long after Basciano and Show World. The record cutting was before the neon, actually. That was my first passion back in 1975. When I started that in 1972 with Melting Pot Sound, that was the passion right there, cutting records. The neon, that came second because it was another childhood fantasy that I had, learning how to do neon glass bending. So back then, if it was something that I would take with me, I wanted to go and do the record mastering, because that's where you're the man who puts the sound in the groove. You're responsible for tailoring the sound that everybody hears on a vinyl record. That is you're the person responsible for that. Yeah, right. and get the credits. I mean, I do have a couple of credits
Yeah.
under my belt. I have The Misfits' first 45, Cough Cool. Willie Wright, I did his first, I did one of his albums, a variety recording. I did quite a few. Right now, I got a website called latecutrecords.com, meltingpotsound.com. If somebody said to me, let's open up a neon school to teach it, I don't know what kind of student base you're going to get, how big of a clientele for neon, classes you're going to get. There's a future in teaching new generation to bend neon glass if they're willing to learn it.
Where can people find you? If they want to reach out to you, you're on the internet. You said Lathe Cut. What was the website again?
You're better off looking up meltingpotsound.com.
Okay.
And there's a link there that takes you to my other website,